welcome Year 9s to week 5 of the Inspiration Project. And today me and Mr. Kavanagh are going to talk you through the theme of the week, which is community. So we hope you like this video on community, also known as Miss Leaders has discovered gifts and is very excited about it.
Very
so
excited.
Community is essentially a group of people who share something in common. So sometimes there's really big communities like the Community of Australia, or medium ones like Community of Richmond, or smaller ones like your own family community or friend community, or as you can see in this GIF here, a very hip community of choir. But there was also a lot of community in Hidden Figures. So Mr. Kavanagh, do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So as Ms. Leda said, there were many examples of community within Hidden Figures. We've listed a couple here on the screen for you, but it'd be a great opportunity for you to try and think of a few others. Think about the main characters, where they operated, who they were surrounding themselves with. And like Ms. Leda said on the previous slide, think of big, broader senses of communities and then more tight-knit, smaller communities as well. If you'd like, you could spend a minute to pause the video here and have a think.
I'm sure you're all pausing it right now. I'm very proud. All right. This week for your tasks, one particular community that we're going to be looking at is school communities, because that was a type of community that was really affected by segregation laws. And we saw it in the movie when Mary wanted to attend the white night school, and obviously was a real struggle for that to occur. During Jim Crow laws, schools were segregated into white and African American schools, and it was a real source of tension as to whether those communities should combine, and separating those two schools actually really impacted the communities who attended them. But there was a really big change in American history, which was the Supreme Court decision in Brown versus the Board of Education. And that found that it was actually unconstitutional to separate schools based on race, which might sound like a really good thing, but interestingly, there were very different reactions to it. You can see in the second image down there, some students protesting the fact that this decision was made. So really interesting community responses. So I'm going to quickly talk you through the 3 different humanities tasks for this week that are all related to the decision in Brown versus Board of Education. Humanities task 1 is a source analysis, and you're going to be looking at images of schools before the decision in Brown versus Board of Education. So there's images of African American schools and white schools, and you'll have to think about what were the differences and how did those differences impact the community. There's a really interesting video at the end that I recommend everyone watch, even if you don't do it, where they actually did research on how this segregation in community impacted the children. They're given a black and a white doll, and they're asked to point to the pretty doll or the smart doll. It's a really moving video that I recommend you have a look at, even if you don't do this task. Humanities task 2, I'll cue some music for the intro to this one. So we'll be heading to the courtroom for task number 2. So all the legal eagles in the classroom will join for this one. So essentially for this one, you'll get to learn a bit more about the decision in Brown versus Board of Education, and think of the way that communities have used the courtroom to improve things for themselves. You'll actually focus in on one of the specific cases in Brown versus Board of Education, do an analysis on it, and collect some primary sources. And lastly, humanities task 3, it's also a source analysis. This time, instead of looking at images, you'll be looking at letters that were in the newspaper after Brown versus Board of Education happened. This is a really interesting task because you're going to be looking at the different reactions that communities had. So some communities were really in favour of Brown versus Board for Education and some weren't. You know, it kind of reminds me of these GIFs that you see on screen right now. We had people like Paul Stafford being against Catherine in the workplace, whereas the boss being really for her joining in. So this is a really interesting task to delve into the way that different communities responded to segregation ending in the United States. All right, over to Mr. Kavanagh to chat through the 3 English tasks.
Okay, so English task 1 it's kind of similar to this week or last week, week 4, where you'll be looking at images and a scene from the film and you'll be analyzing these. So I think if you really like looking and learning through visual prompts, this is the option for you. You'll be looking at the 2 images here on the screen and you'll be discussing how the different communities are depicted in the film. And I think this is an interesting one for you guys to have a look at the set, the costumes, how the characters laid out in the images. And I think that could lead to some really cool analysis for you there. So that's the first task.
Sounds like an interesting task for anyone who's into drama or theatre studies, Mr. Kavanagh.
It is indeed.
Absolutely. All right, over to number 2.
Now, English task 2, this is for people who think they're people persons or they like discussing characters in films. You'll be looking at trailblazers in their community. So each of the individual characters in the film, through their own individual brilliance, actually uplift the communities that they are a part of. So you'll be looking at the five major characters, the 3 women, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, as well as 2 men in the film, Al Harrison, who is the boss of the research team, and John Glenn, who is the astronaut who flew the rocket into space. For each of those characters, you'll be looking at important moments or quotes in the film, and then doing some more extended responses on how these individual characters impacted the communities that they were a part of.
Awesome.
And then lastly, task 3. I think this is going to be a really fun task. So I really encourage you guys to try and do this one if you think that it's interesting. It focuses on Pharrell Williams and freedom songs. So pick this option if you like music and the power of singing and you want to have a bit of fun with it. So this is talking about the soundtrack of the film, which is actually really important and in many ways mirrors the impact and significance of freedom songs during the civil rights movement. It looks at the role of the church in the African American community as a place where people could congregate, get together, sing together, and more importantly, discuss social issues and injustices at the time. So it's taking a kind of creative, fun lens through looking at Pharrell Williams towards a more serious or significant moment in history. So yeah, I really do encourage you to give this one a crack. You get to listen to some of the songs, look at the lyrics. It should be a bit of fun for you.
Sounds excellent. All right. Last thing from me, Mr. Kavanagh, is I think I can speak on behalf of both of us to say how proud we've been of all of you working so hard. So keep it up. And congratulations to getting the end of this fantastic video. It wouldn't be a lesson with Miss Letus if there weren't some form points involved. So I'm really keen to celebrate anyone who's watched this video in full. So the first 3 people from each form to send me an email will get a form point. So I look forward to seeing your emails telling me how fantastic you found this video. As always, if you have any questions or need any help, please email us or whoever your teacher is, because we'd love to hear from you. But have a great week, guys. We'll see you soon.
Good luck, team.